Deep within the dense heart of the forest, a place where sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy of leaves, the cries of a child pierced the stillness. It was a sound of desperation, of innocence abandoned, and it came from a small girl, no more than 8 years old, trembling as she leaned against the gnarled roots of an ancient tree. Her name was Lily, a child who had seen more pain than most could fathom. The young girl's legs were frail and twisted, a condition that made walking nearly impossible without support. Her soft brown eyes, which once sparkled with dreams and curiosity, were now filled with terror as she stared into the endless green wilderness around her. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Lily's stepmother, a woman named Vanessa, had brought her to the forest that morning. Vanessa was an impatient and cold woman, resentful of the responsibility thrust upon her when Lily's father remarried. Over time, her indifference turned to cruelty. And when Lily's father died in a tragic accident months earlier, any remaining shred of care vanished. For Vanessa, Lily became an unbearable burden. And so, under the guise of a walk in the woods, Vanessa had carried Lily far from home, deep into the labyrinth of the forest, far beyond any place Lily recognized. After hours of trekking, Vanessa stopped abruptly, putting Lily down against the base of a towering tree. "Stay here," she said curtly, her voice devoid of warmth. Lily blinked up at her, confused. "I'll be back soon," Vanessa added, but her eyes betrayed her intentions. She turned swiftly, her heels crunching the dried leaves underfoot, and walked away. The sound of her steps faded until there was nothing but silence. Minutes turned into hours, and Lily's innocent hope that her stepmother would return slowly withered like the dying leaves around her. The forest, though beautiful, now felt alive in all the wrong ways. Shadows shifted menacingly, branches creaked as if whispering secrets, and the distant cries of unknown creatures made Lily shudder. Her small frame huddled tighter against the tree, her arms wrapping around her knees as best she could. The pain in her legs was unbearable after being left in the same position for so long. She tried calling out, her weak voice swallowed by the forest's expanse. She felt small, lost, and entirely alone. Hours passed, and as twilight began to descend, darkness swallowed the forest whole. The cold seeped into Lily's skin, and her exhaustion threatened to pull her into an uneasy sleep. But then she heard something, a sound unlike the distant bird calls or rustling leaves. It was heavier, closer. The thud of footsteps vibrated through the earth. Lily's heart began to race as she squinted into the darkness, her breath hitching when she saw it. A gorilla stepped into view, its enormous form moving soundlessly through the undergrowth. The creature was magnificent, yet terrifying, its muscular body partially illuminated by a sliver of moonlight filtering through the trees. Its fur was dark as night, its deep-set eyes glimmering with intelligence and curiosity. Lily froze, paralyzed by fear. She had heard stories of wild animals in forests, stories of claws and teeth, of danger lurking at every turn. She wanted to scream, to crawl away, but her body refused to obey. The gorilla tilted its massive head as though trying to understand the small figure before it. For what felt like an eternity, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, the gorilla knelt down, its large hands resting on the earth, mere feet from Lily. Its presence was overwhelming, but instead of baring its teeth or showing aggression, it sat quietly, watching her. It was as if the animal could sense her vulnerability, her helplessness. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks as she whispered, "Please, don't hurt me." The gorilla blinked at her, its gaze soft and calm. Then, to her astonishment, it reached out its hand, not to strike her, but to offer something. In its palm was a cluster of berries, dark and ripe, clearly gathered from nearby bushes. Lily hesitated, her stomach twisting with hunger. Her stepmother had left her with nothing, and the pangs of starvation gnawed at her. After a moment of uncertainty, she reached out with a trembling hand and took the berries, murmuring a soft, "Thank you." The gorilla stayed close to her that night. It sat beside her, its massive frame forming a protective barrier against the unknown dangers of the forest. When the night grew colder, the gorilla shifted closer, sharing its body warmth. Lily eventually drifted into a fitful sleep, her small body leaning against the creature's sturdy form. In that moment, the gorilla wasn't a monster or a beast. It was a guardian. As dawn broke and light spilled through the trees, Lily awoke to find the gorilla still there. It watched her carefully, as though ensuring she was safe. Over the next few hours, the gorilla seemed to take charge of her survival. It would disappear briefly into the foliage, returning with fruits, leaves, and nuts for Lily to eat. It brought her water by dipping its hands into a nearby stream, dripping cool droplets onto her parched lips. It even found large leaves, spreading them carefully around her as though creating a makeshift bed. Days passed in this strange companionship, and Lily began to trust the gorilla. She spoke to it softly, telling it about her father, about how she missed him, and how Vanessa had left her here. The gorilla would listen, its dark eyes holding a depth of understanding Lily couldn't explain. She gave it a name, Moko, a word she remembered her father once telling her meant protector in an old language. One morning, Lily heard voices, distant shouts that sent a jolt of fear through her. She thought perhaps Vanessa had returned, angry that Lily had somehow survived. But as the voices grew closer, she realized they were deeper, unfamiliar. Men emerged through the foliage, forest rangers, their uniforms stained with dirt as they hacked their way toward her. The sight of people should have filled Lily with relief. But instead, her first instinct was to look for Moko. The gorilla had already sensed the intruders, standing nearby, watching carefully. The rangers spotted Lily immediately, their expressions turning to shock and concern. "We found her!" one of them shouted to a man holding a radio. "She's alive!" The commotion startled Moko, who moved back slightly. One of the men pointed, his voice low and tense. "There's a gorilla here! Stay back! It could be dangerous!" "No!" Lily cried, her voice stronger than it had been in days. She struggled to sit up, using her arms to pull herself forward. "He's not dangerous! He helped me! He's my friend!" The men hesitated, their confusion evident. They were trained to see wild animals as unpredictable. But Lily's words made them pause. Moko stood still, his eyes darting between Lily and the strangers. Then, as if understanding that her safety was now in their hands, the gorilla turned and melted back into the forest. Lily watched him disappear, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered after him, her heart heavy with both gratitude and loss. The rangers carried Lily out of the forest, their voices filled with awe as they spoke about the gorilla that had protected her. News of Lily's survival spread quickly, and soon the story of the jungle guardian captivated everyone who heard it. Experts speculated on why the gorilla had behaved so gently, concluding that some animals possess an empathy beyond human understanding. But Lily knew the truth. Moko wasn't just an animal. He had been her savior, her friend, when she had no one else. As days turned into weeks, Lily's life began to change. Authorities investigated Vanessa, who was arrested and charged with child abandonment. Lily was taken into the care of a loving family who welcomed her with open arms. She received medical attention for her legs and began the slow process of healing, physically and emotionally. Yet, even as her life improved, her thoughts often drifted back to the forest, to the nights she spent under the watchful eyes of her protector. Years later, when Lily was older and able to walk with the help of braces, she returned to that forest. Accompanied by a team of researchers, she stepped carefully through the dense undergrowth, searching for signs of Moko. Though she never saw him again, she found comfort in knowing that somewhere deep in the forest, the guardian gorilla still roamed free, watching over his world. Lily's story became a legend, a tale whispered across towns and villages, a reminder of the incredible bond that can form between humans and nature. It taught people that kindness often comes from unexpected places, and that even in the darkest of moments, there is hope. For Lily, Moko would forever remain her jungle guardian, the silent hero who saved her life when the world had abandoned her. As time passed, Lily grew into a young woman, but the memory of the forest and her guardian gorilla, Moko, remained etched into her heart. While she was grateful for the new family that adopted her and the love they showered upon her, there was a bond that no human could replace. A connection forged in the wilderness, with a creature that society deemed a beast. Lily would often sit by the window, her eyes drifting to the horizon where the dense green of the forest began. She thought of the way the shadows moved, of how the forest spoke its own secret language, one she was just beginning to understand. Her adoptive parents, though kind and attentive, did not quite grasp why their daughter spoke of the forest with such reverence. They thought it was a chapter of her life best left behind, something dark and painful that should remain buried. But to Lily, it wasn't pain that lingered, it was awe. One summer morning, years after her rescue, Lily received an unexpected letter. It came from a wildlife conservation group working deep in the same forest where she had been found. The letter was an invitation to visit their base camp and see the work they were doing to protect the region's gorilla population. Lily's heart raced as she read the words. For years, she had wondered about Moko, whether he was alive, whether he still roamed the forest, safe and free. Now, she had a chance to return, to honor the creature that had saved her life. Her adoptive parents hesitated when she told them about her plan. "Are you sure you want to go back?" her mother asked softly, concern furrowing her brow. "That place, it holds so many memories for you." "Yes," Lily replied firmly. "It's exactly why I have to go back. I owe it to Moko. I owe it to myself." After weeks of preparation, Lily found herself once again on the edge of the vast, unyielding forest. The journey there was long and winding, the kind of trek only those with purpose or madness undertook. Her heart pounded with both fear and anticipation as she stepped out of the vehicle and into the humid air. The conservation group's base camp was small, nestled between the trees like it belonged there, with tents and wooden platforms blending into the wild surroundings. "Welcome back to where it all began," said Michael, one of the researchers and the head of the conservation team. He was a tall, wiry man with graying hair and a warm, knowing smile. "We've been studying the gorilla families here for years. I heard your story when it made headlines, and it inspired me to dedicate my life to this work. Gorillas like Moko, they're misunderstood, but they're gentle giants, capable of so much empathy. We have a lot to learn from them." Lily felt a lump form in her throat as Michael led her deeper into the camp. He showed her photographs of the gorillas they had been tracking. Majestic silverbacks, playful juveniles, and watchful mothers with infants clinging to their backs. Each face told a story, a glimpse into a world few humans ever got to see. But among all the images, one caught Lily's attention. A gorilla with deep, familiar eyes. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael leaned closer, studying the photo. That's one of our oldest silverbacks. We call him Kumo. He's been around for years and he's a bit of a legend. There's something special about him. He's protective, almost human in his behavior. Rangers say he's been seen keeping watch over sick animals and even guarding lost hikers until help arrives. Why? Do you recognize him?" Lily's hands trembled as she touched the photograph. I think this might be Moko." Michael's brows shot up in surprise. "You think he's the same one? It's possible, but we'd have to confirm it. Gorillas have long memories, you know. If he truly is Moko, there's a good chance he remembers you." The thought sent shivers down Lily's spine. The forest had been her prison once, but it had also been her sanctuary. Now, it felt like fate had brought her back to see the creature who had been her protector. The next day, Michael and his team prepared for a trek into the gorilla's territory. Lily joined them, her legs supported by the braces she wore to help her walk. Though her movements were slow and measured, her determination never wavered. The researchers led her through winding trails across streams and over fallen logs. Each step brought her closer to the heart of the forest, where time itself seemed to stand still. Hours passed before Michael raised a hand, signaling the group to stop. "We're close," he whispered. "There's a gorilla family nearby. Be quiet and follow my lead." Lily's heart hammered as she followed Michael's careful steps. The group crept forward until the foliage parted, revealing a clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. There, sitting calmly in the center of the clearing, was a massive silverback. He was surrounded by other gorillas, young ones tumbling over each other, mothers watching them, and juveniles foraging for food. But it was the silverback who held Lily's gaze. He sat tall and proud, his fur dusted with streaks of silver, his dark eyes glimmering with intelligence. "Kumo," Michael whispered, pointing to the silverback. "That's him." Lily swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She studied the gorilla's face, searching for some sign, some spark of recognition. Tentatively, she stepped closer, her braces clicking softly against the ground. The silverback turned his head, his gaze falling on Lily. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The other gorillas grew quiet, their movements stilling as though they too sensed something extraordinary. Kumo tilted his head, his deep-set eyes locking onto Lily's face. The forest held its breath as the girl and the gorilla stared at each other, separated by species yet bound by something unspoken. Then, to Lily's astonishment, Kumo rose slowly to his full height. The other gorillas watched in awe as their leader stepped forward, his massive frame moving with deliberate grace. Michael and the researchers froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. "He's coming closer," someone whispered, though no one dared move. Lily felt tears prick her eyes as Kumo stopped a few feet away from her. She could see the wisdom etched into his features, the years he had lived, the experiences he had endured. Slowly she raised her hand, palm open, just as she had done all those years ago when he offered her berries. "Kumo," she whispered softly. "Moko." The silverback's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing slightly as if sifting through distant memories. And then, as though a veil had lifted, Kumo let out a deep, rumbling sound, a sound that was gentle, familiar. He lowered himself onto his knuckles and stepped closer, until Lily could almost touch him. His gaze held hers, and in that moment, she knew. It was him. It was Moko. A sob escaped Lily's lips as she whispered, "You remember me, don't you?" Kumo let out another low rumble, his breath stirring the air between them. Without warning, he reached out one massive hand, palm up, mirroring the gesture Lily had made moments ago. It was as if he too was saying, "I remember." The researchers watched in stunned silence as Lily reached out, her small hand brushing against Kumo's fur. The connection was electric, as though years of separation had melted away in an instant. In that clearing, surrounded by the watchful eyes of the gorilla family, girl and gorilla were reunited. Two souls who had once saved each other in a world that had turned its back on them. Over the following days, Lily spent time observing Kumo and his family. She watched as he led them through the forest, his presence a constant source of protection and strength. The younger gorillas played under his watchful eye, and the mothers trusted him implicitly. He was their leader, their guardian, just as he had once been hers. Before she left the forest, Lily sat alone on a rock watching Kumo from a distance. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over the clearing. She knew this would be the last time she saw him, but that was okay. Kumo belonged here, in the wild, free and untamed. This was his home, and Lily understood now that he had given her a gift far greater than survival. He had taught her about strength, about resilience, and about the beauty of trust. When Lily returned to the conservation camp, Michael approached her with a smile. "You know, what happened back there? It's something none of us will ever forget. Kumo isn't just a gorilla. He's a miracle." Lily nodded, her heart full. "He's more than that," she replied softly. "He's family." Years later, Lily would become an advocate for wildlife conservation, dedicating her life to protecting gorillas like Kumo. Her story became a symbol of hope, a testament to the extraordinary bonds that can form between humans and animals. Schools, organizations, and media outlets shared her tale, inspiring people across the globe to see wildlife not as something separate from humanity, but as part of a larger, interconnected world. Lily would often visit the edge of the forest, staring into its depths with quiet reverence. Though she never saw Kumo again, she knew he was out there, somewhere, watching over his family just as he had once watched over her. And in her heart she carried him with her always, a silent guardian, a protector, a friend. As the years unfolded, Lily's bond with the forest and her experience with Kumo became an integral part of who she was. She grew into a respected advocate, tirelessly working to bridge the gap between humans and the natural world. Her story became a foundation for conversations about conservation, empathy, and the forgotten balance between nature and humanity. People who had once seen animals as beasts began to view them as sentient, feeling beings capable of extraordinary compassion. Lily traveled the world, sharing her story with children in schools, scientists at conferences, and governments debating conservation policies. Each time she spoke of Moko, now known to the world as Kumo, she brought a renewed sense of awe and inspiration to her audience. Yet even with all her achievements, Lily's heart remained tied to the forest where her life had been irrevocably changed. Whenever her advocacy brought her near that place, she would stand quietly at its edge, listening to the hum of life within. The wind carried the distant cries of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the faint calls of animals. Though she could not see Kumo, she could feel him in the depths of the forest, watching, listening, just as he always had. Lily often imagined him surrounded by his family, leading the next generation of gorillas through the shadows and sunlit paths of their world. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on a stepmom abandoning her disabled daughter in a jungle? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.